Alright guys, in this video I'm going to teach you how to use the protractors and how to rotate a shape, giving a center of rotation, a specific angle to be rotated at, and the direction the shape has to be rotated. For this, I'm going to be using protractors. You might have different types of protractors. In my case right now I have 3 with me. The ones that we'll be using in class will be something like this and something like this, but even something smaller like this will also work. Okay, so how do you start doing this in a problem like this? Okay, in this problem you have to take this image, the quadrilateral ABC, and we have to rotate it 120 degrees counterclockwise. It's this way. Okay, so we're gonna have to rotate it this way counterclockwise. All right. We have to also take into consideration this very important point, which is called point D. In this case, is point D, which is called our center of rotation. Okay, center of rotation. The center of rotation, it's what we'll be using to rotate this shape eventually. Okay, so let's begin. And let me explain how to use each of these protractors. Pretty simple. You're going to notice some reference point that will be used to place in our center of rotation. Okay, let's point out this point D is my center of rotation. That means that my protractor should always be centered in this point. Okay, in my case, my protractor will be placed here. Also, let's say that we are trying to rotate this point A. So point A will be the point that we'll be rotating. That means that my protractor should be placed there, and it should be pointing this way. Notice that it's pointing to the, you can barely see it here, but this is the 0. Point A, it's centered at the center of rotation, and it is going over my point A. Okay, from here I can choose to rotate this point. Well, actually it's telling me to rotate 120 degrees counterclockwise. This way it's going clockwise. I actually have to rotate it counterclockwise. So I'll be changing it here. But notice it's still the same. You can barely see the numbers here. But this is, here we have the 180 and here we have the 0. Okay, so it's still pointing to 0, but remember we have to go counterclockwise, which means that from here we have to look for, so 0, 10, 20, we're going all the way up to 120. And 120, let me move this over, 120 is right here. I know that it might be too far. Sometimes it's better to use smaller protractors, but you can see from here to where A is pointing, that is degree 0. And then as you open it counterclockwise to this tick mark is 120. Now the next step is to draw a line, a segment from D from my center of rotation to where my tick mark is. And that'll be somewhere there. I recommend that for this step use a pencil, because you don't want to make you need to draw a line, but you don't want to make it very thick. You can make just a very thin and light line. Okay. Now, here's my line. Now, somewhere along this line, my my rotated point A, it's going to be somewhere in this line. Remember, the distance of rotations must remain equal. So if this point has this distance, which is like one little triangle, two little triangles away, my rotated point must also be two little triangles away. So here's one little triangle, two little triangles away. Here is my new point A, which we'll call A prime. Okay, I gotta do the same thing with point B. Point B, I'm gonna use this other protractor now. You can see a little tick mark here on the protractor. Here's where you want your point of your center point. There you go, it's on top of it. This time it should actually be pointing towards point D, because point D is the point that we are rotating. Also notice that I have my protractor going to the right side, but that is clockwise. I want it on the other side, going counterclockwise. Notice also that I flip my protractor. It doesn't matter if it's one way or another, because on both sides you should have 0 and 180 and 0 and 180. So it doesn't matter in which way it is. Lay it flat. Point B should be pointing at 0. There's my center point, point D, and it's pointing to B at 0. So we're going to be opening this from 0 all the way up to 120, which is here. I made a tick mark. Here's my tick mark. I need to connect now my tick mark from the center. Something like that. It is supposed to be perfect. I'm not doing this for accuracy as much, but it should lay something like that, going over my line in this case. Remember, what's the distance between D and point B? It's one little triangle, two little triangles, three little triangles. That means the somewhere along this other line, three little triangles away, one little triangle, two little triangles, three little triangles, I will find my point B prime. B prime. All right. Now, after you're done making these lines, you can actually erase them. You don't really need them. So my first line, I can erase it. I can even erase the whole thing because my point is labeled already. I can do the same thing for the other one. I can erase the whole thing because my points are there now. So it's a good idea to do it with pencil. All right, now for my last point, point C, I'm gonna use this little protractor, which I think it's like the best. So here is my point of rotation, point D. I center my protractor there. My segment is going over my point C. You can barely see the C, but there's C. I need to line them up. Right there. Has to be pointing to my point 0. And from here, I'm going to open it. Wait, I'm sorry again. I'm going clockwise. I actually want to go counterclockwise. Okay, there you go. Now my point C, I want to open it 120 degrees counterclockwise. So here's 0, 10, 20, 30, 120. So 120, it's like right there. Okay, it's lined up with 60, but I'm not counting 60. Notice that I'm counting from 0 to 10, 20, 30, this way up to 120. I'm following the numbers inside, not the numbers outside. Okay, so 20, here is my tick mark. So again, I'm going to connect my point D to my tick mark, which lies somewhere there. Let me make my line a little more noticeable. All right, so somewhere along this line, I'm gonna have my point C. Notice that C is 1, 2 little triangles away. So my new point C will be 1, 2 little triangles away. Here is my new C prime. I can go ahead and erase my lines. I'm keeping my points. Now, point D is my last point, but point D is my point of rotation. Remember that each point has to be the same distance away from my point of rotation. But if point D is also my point of rotation, point D is 0 units away from the point of rotation. So my new D prime should be 0 units away from D. That means D, it's also my D prime. I can go ahead and connect these points now. And I should have A prime, B prime, A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. My new quadrilateral. Okay, notice that this is a point-by-point process. Because you're using the protractor, it's impossible to do one whole shape at once. But usually, you can find shortcuts as well. If you're able to find, let's say, 2 points, and you know that, for instance, here you have your original DA, you would know that point B, it's like right above A. So if you have your point AD, that would mean the point D, it's right on this side, also for point C. So there's shortcuts that you can do. This shape might not be as simple to predict where the rest of the points will be, but you would definitely find easier shapes like triangles or maybe squares, and that'll make it easier to see where the rest of the points are without having to rotate each point individually. Okay, but this is how it works. We just rotated this shape 120 degrees counterclockwise. Okay. You will be expected to know how to use the protractors to do this. If you want to get your own protractor, you can go ahead and do so. They're pretty cheap, but I also have some in class that we'll be using. I don't have any of these. This is the only one I have, but we have these 2 ones, and they work just as fine.